But I want to start with the news of the day, and that is that Aiden Hutchinson has become a finalist for the Heisman Trophy.
Man.
Aiden Hutchinson, that is right.
Hold on, Ryan. I don't want to cut you off. If I'm correct, somebody on this show, I could be wrong. Somebody on this show said something like that about 5, 6, 7 weeks ago. That Aiden Hutchinson probably would be there.
And whose picture is not up there?
Oh, my goodness. I'll tell you, Michigan State Twitter lost their minds last night. Tom Mazaway, did they not?
They certainly did. I got to be honest. I said it yesterday. I thought he earned a trip to New York at least. I mean, he was one of the leading candidates going in. We're talking about Kenneth Walker, K9. I think he should have went to New York along with the 4 finalists that were there. That's my thought.
I'm not surprised he's not in New York, and I don't care. Let me share something with you. Real quick story is didn't have all of the games that you could see at any time. My senior year, Butch Woolfolk and I used to always read Sunday morning how well Marcus Allen did. And he was the leading candidate for the Heisman, and we're both saying, we're better than he is. I forget that. So they showed the Notre Dame and USC game replay that Sunday morning. Notre Dame and USC played every year. That particular game was played in South Bend. Marcus only had 120 yards. Notre Dame beat the crap out of them. But Marcus was hitting the backfield every play. He was dragging guys for 6 and 7 yards every play. He earned it. And after that game, I'm like, I get it. I see why this guy, when he had literally no blocking, was the Heisman Trophy candidate and the eventual Heisman Trophy winner. What I also saw is when Michigan State was getting their behinds handed to them in Columbus, I saw Kenneth Walker walking up and down the sideline. I said, he must have had a concussion. And I went on to read, I didn't see it. Maybe he did. And I'm like, he doesn't look hurt, and his team needs him, and he's not playing. Granted, they're trying to throw to get back in the game, but if you're a Heisman Trophy candidate, you don't leave the game.
That's not him.
And Ryan,
it's his coach.
And Ryan,
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead,
if he really wanted to get in the game, and if he'd have walked in the huddle and not even asked, they would have not have taken him out the game.
They were not ready for that game, Stan. They were undressed from the get-go.
We're talking about Kenneth Walker III. Are you a Heisman candidate? Are you the best player in college football or not? If you are, you get your butt back out there and play.
Are you the leader of that team to what you're saying? I've been in games where, Lloyd had me on the bench. And I said, you know what? They need me in this particular play. They need me in this. When you're the guy for a team, to what Dad is saying, you can make that decision. You're not a sophomore. You're not a freshman. When you're a senior, when it's your last year, when you are the man, you can walk in the huddle. You can walk on the field. You can tell coach, I don't give a damn about what you're saying. I'm getting in that huddle. And what are they going to say? But to your point, Dad, and to what Ryan always said, what did you not do at Grosse Pointe South?
I never came off the field.
And there it is.
Offense, defense, special teams. If there was a Heisman Trophy for 5
okay, don't go. All right.
I won't go.
Really,
I never came off the field, but the point is too, when you look at these Heisman Trophy presentations or the finalists, unless you have absolutely gaudy numbers, it becomes who's the best team and what are the biggest moments. In Michigan State's biggest moment against Ohio State, they got blitzed off the field and Kenneth Walker had 25 yards. Now, a lot of that maybe wasn't his fault, that they got down 21-0 within the first, 3-4 minutes of the game, but nonetheless, that's it. If you look at Aiden Hutchinson, what did he do in this team's biggest moment against Ohio State? 15 quarterback pressures.
Most ever.
3 sacks. Most ever recorded.
In modern stat history, most ever.
And everybody's talking about, well, not everybody, because I believe he is as dominant for the Michigan Wolverines. Well, he doesn't have the gaudy sack numbers like maybe some others have had over the years. Stats don't tell the whole story all the time.
No, they don't.
Just look at, when we had your buddy on, Braylon, Marcus Ray. No, Marcus Ray. What did Marcus Ray talk about in terms of Charles Woodson?
Yeah.
Charles Woodson, nobody threw to Charles Woodson's side. So just because he didn't have, lead the nation in interceptions that year, he took half the field away without doing a thing, just being out there. So numbers don't tell the whole story. Game plans whole offensive week-long game plans are trying to decide how to stop or get beyond or by Aiden Hutchinson.
Two things. One, obviously this is the NFL, so it's different from college. But when you look at Darrelle Revis' numbers after his second year in the NFL, they're not gaudy numbers. You're wondering how is he All-Pro. You're wondering how did he make the Pro Bowl. He's got one interception, 2 interceptions. Like, he has no stats, but what he also has, nobody catches passes on him. Richard Sherman had very similar numbers, very similar stats. To your point, they don't tell the whole story. And with Kenneth Walker, listen, he's a great back. He had a really good.
He's a good back.
Excuse me, not great. He's a good back. He had a good year, almost a great year, but it's a 1683. You didn't win the Big Ten. You got 18 touchdowns. Your rival Hassan Haskins had 1340, 20 touchdowns. That's comparable. Hassan didn't get an invite either. You know what I'm saying? You got to win the Big Ten, and in the biggest moments, you got to perform. You look at not the Western Kentucky. You look at the Nebraska game. That was a tough game for Michigan State. He only had 62 yards.
Well,
you look at the Indiana game. That was a tough game for Michigan State. He only had 82 yards. You got to hit it on the head every game if you want to win the Heisman. Look at Derrick Henry. Look at Melvin Gordon. Look at Bryce Young. Look at Christian McCaffrey. And the list. Look at Reggie Bush. If you want to get there as a running back, you got to do something great. And he didn't do something great. He did something really good, not great.
What's their record?
10-2.
What would their record be without him?
You could do that on any team in the country.
I'm just telling you.
I know, but you could do that on any team in the country, Maz.
Yeah, Maz.
It's college football.
I blocked for 3
I know you did.
Heisman Trophy winning running backs.
I know.
I blocked for Earl Campbell. I blocked for Mike Rozier. I cheated on one in an All-Star game. I blocked for Marcus Allen. We played an All-Star game. He had already won the Heisman, though, but I blocked for him. Kenneth Walker is not in those class. He's not that kind of back.
And I will tell you, just some numbers. I did some digging this morning. Since 2010, and I always talk about how there have been 3 Heisman winners since 2000. All 3 players played in the national championship game. 2 won it. But even
Reggie, Mark, Derrick Henry.
just even back to 2010, okay? Just in the last 10, 11 years here, because college football has changed a little bit. The Heisman finalists, not only winners, there have been 30 Heisman Trophy finalists at quarterback, 3 wide receivers, 9 running backs, and 5 defensive players, 2 of which by the Michigan Wolverines, I'll have you note, which is a big deal. But of the 9 running backs, Kenneth Walker would have worse statistics than 8 of them. And the only one that he'd have better rushing yards than is Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey had 43 less rushing yards than him, but he also caught passes out of the backfield. He also returned punts. He also returned kicks. And, oh, by the way,
5 returns for touchdowns, by the way.
His Stanford Cardinal team won the Pac-12 championship and eventually went on to win the Rose Bowl. It is very hard to make it to New York as a running back. It is even more hard to win it. And Kenneth Walker, really, really good player. And, of course, the 5 touchdowns against Michigan are great. But if you're judging what a Heisman finalist should be based on 5 touchdowns against your rival, I introduce to you Hassan Haskins, who also had 5 touchdowns against their rival and became the first player in the history of college football to rush for 5 touchdowns against Ohio State. Sorry.
Here's another interesting stat. And I don't like to play the game of what if. But you know what? What if? Because we're having this conversation. What if the referees weren't incompetent against Michigan State? Aiden Hutchinson now has another sack. Oh, by the way, a fumble, a forced fumble. Oh, by the way, a touchdown added to that. They go into the locker room up 14. They get the ball after half. Now what does Michigan State have to do in that game? Pass. So what does that leave for Aiden Hutchinson? More sacks, more forced fumbles. Karma is a you-know-what.
Well, here's what I do know is that when you're talking about a Heisman Trophy player, and let's talk about a back in this, there's 3 things you're going to consider. You're going to consider production, you're going to consider stats, and ability. So there's a difference between production and statistics. Production means you are able to deliver in a number of different ways and to make your team win. Stats mean you're just piling stuff up, whether your team loses or not. Ability, Kenneth Walker's a good back. I don't know how well he'll do in the pros. He might win. He might go to 10 Pro Bowls, or he might just be average. Right now, I just don't know. He's a good college back.
Here's the other thing, and tell me if I'm wrong, Maz. I'm sending it out to you. A guy that goes to New York, the Downtown Athletic Club, as it's called, for the Heisman Trophy, for you guys out there that don't know, you got to be a game changer. Like, when you go into the game to play against one of these individuals, you have to be the main focus of that defense, or you have to be the main focus of that offense. When Ohio State came into the big house, they were idiots, but who was their main focus in terms of wanting to block? Aiden Hutchinson was the guy they were focusing on. Like, when you go into the game against Kenny Pickett, you know that this is the guy that's going to beat you. Bryce Young, etc. And the list goes on. Reggie Bush, we got to stop him in the slot. We got to stop him from kicking out. We know that he likes to take the tall sweep. You have to focus on those guys. When you go against Michigan State, you're like, well, Kenneth Walker's a good back, but the receivers are good too. So we'll take our chance. We'll figure it out. You don't necessarily key on Kenneth Walker. You necessarily just focus on their wide receivers and him as a whole.
Well, I think Kenneth Walker reminds me of two players who actually went to the Downtown Athletic Club and won it from a player. Gino Torretta, Rashawn Salam. That's who I think he's the type of player he is right now.
Rest in peace, Rashawn Salam.
Give him credit. Those guys won the Heisman, let alone obviously go there. He didn't go. But I just think because you have stats all the time don't mean you can play.
Kenneth Walker, 4 games this year, he didn't
have
100 yards, and twice, once against Northwestern, once against Rutgers, did he surpass 200 yards rushing in a game. Again, very good. To get an invite, you have to be special.
And two of those games, they almost lost. Like, so if you're going to almost lose to it, you got to put on as the guy on your team. 2 of those games, Nebraska as well as Indiana, they almost lost.
We're going to have some fun next.
That wasn't fun?
Hate to say it, but I told you so. Ermanni and Edwards.
Woodward Sports Network, Ermanni was right.